everyone, Alex with Click here. Today we're doing a episode with Alex from Click. Uh, Obviously, I've said my name I think like 3 times already. Alex with Click. I'd like to show you this week's top paying routes brought to you by EF Routing. So the top hauls of the week for this week are for dry van from Lafayette, Indiana to Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's 695 miles, paying out $2.37 to 297. It's about 300 to 400 loads per day. It's pretty easy to book out of there. Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Allentown, Pennsylvania. Get you a return trip back to that area. It's 800 miles in between $2.30 to almost $3. Almost in between 250 loads a day. It's pretty good to profit out of, and there's like about 91% chance that you could connect right there. Reefer loads, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is really hot to go into Springfield, Massachusetts right now. Almost 260 miles, $4 to almost $5 a mile. There's about 200 to 230 loads out of there a day. It's nice. I would like to run out of there too. Lafayette, Indiana, getting on down to Allentown, Pennsylvania for reefer. It's close to 700 miles, $2.75 to up to $3.50. Wow, nice little amount of loads out there, between 100 to 150. Great lane. Flatbed from Winona, Mississippi over to Dallas, Texas, almost 400 miles, $3 to $4.55. Not a bad lane for my South carriers. And it looks like you can get a load out of Fort Worth over to West Monroe, Louisiana for close to $3 and almost $4. The best loop for van this week is going into Chicago to Fort Worth, Texas, down to Houston, Texas, over to Athens and back to Chicago. You're looking at a total potential of between $6,000 to $6,500. Incoming about $1,200 a day. It's not a bad lane for my dry van carriers in this market. Reefer from Indianapolis, Indiana to Baltimore, from Baltimore to Milwaukee, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania back to Indianapolis. You're looking at a total income of $6,300 to $8,000. Not bad, almost $1,500 on the average income per day. That is for my reefer. And for my flatbed people, Raleigh, North Carolina, over to Muncie, Indiana, into Chicago, over to Akron, Ohio, back into Raleigh, North Carolina. Looking at close to seven to 1,800 miles, about 5,000 to 6,200 on the average income, and almost $2,000 on average income per day. Not bad for my flatbed people. All brought to you by EF Routing.
Well, thank you for running the intro, man. I think you did a great job.
A little something different from last time.
Hey, I like the host swap stuff, man, because it gives people a taste of what being the host is. I think people think it's really simple, but once you're the one on the camera, once you're the one that has to do it, you start to see it's not as easy as it might seem,
Hey, man, this past Saturday I was getting punched in the face for a fight. I'd rather do that than host a podcast, man. So.
Hey, I mean, you don't look too bad if you were in a scheduled fight. This is a legal fight we're talking about, guys.
Just a little cut on my face. It wasn't too bad.
It's not some bar brawl. Don't worry about it. All right, man. So I would consider you a friend at this point. We've been, friends for quite some time. We've got into some business stuff together. We've had you on the show before. People might know these stories, but I want to go through, how the show is supposed to run for anybody that doesn't know you. And we have a lot more time since it's just me and you today. Let's kick it off. I mean, how did you get into logistics?
I got into it when I was fresh out of high school. Funny story. My dad has always worked 2 jobs, blue collar guy. His afternoon shift was for a company called Assemblers Inc. He was a forklift driver there. I was a forklift driver for about 2 weeks. They needed somebody bilingual to kind of help out coordinating the logistics between, my job was simple: assigning drivers to a dock door, then assigning those drivers over, those trucks over to our forklift guys. From there, it kind of evolved. I went through the ranks. I started off as a simple window clerk, became a logistics coordinator, right underneath the logistics supervisor and the logistics manager until I became eventually a logistics supervisor. At like 19, I started doing this at 18, but at 19, I really fell in love with it after a year in. Funny enough, it's to pay. I got into logistics because I needed a full-time job to help pay for fight camps. So the whole reason I'm in logistics is because, boxing is expensive when you want to do it professionally or semi-professionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two sports in the world. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of like golf, but usually it's motorcycles, fighting stuff like expensive sports
Yeah.
that are expensive hobbies that get people young into working full time.
Yeah, so I mean, it was that. From there, I went over to a brokerage, and just as the pandemic was coming over, I was funny enough, one of the carrier broker partners that we had when I was down at Assemblers. I was always beating him down on the price on the inbound rates, and he said, you know what? He's like, if I could hire you, I would, but after that, a huge shout out. I actually visited him today, my old boss, Reese Resendez from Assemblers. He's one of the people that kind of pushed me. I was pretty young, and he always told me, don't get stuck here. I could give you a letter of recommendation if you ever want to go somewhere. I took his word on it. I kind of decided, I was like, what's the best route to go? I was thinking about, being a dispatcher. Every day I would see a couple of carriers ranging from like, your Eastern European carrier models that happen here in Chicago, it was true. A lot of these MCs, they tell me, yeah, our office is in Elk Grove Village. It's in this, and it was a lot of like.
It's funny to me because now that I'm on the brokerage side, I didn't realize how prevalent the bulk and dispatching really is, but it's pretty big, and it's always funny to me because I'm over here, right? So I'm Canadian, but I live in Serbia, and I know that they're over here. I know these companies, and they'll be like, no, man, I'm out in Florida. I'm like, hey, it's not a dirty word. It's not a secret. Don't worry about it.
It's
you just tell me you're over here. I'll come have lunch with you. You're not gonna hide it from me. Don't worry.
No, it's perfectly funny too. I mean, being a Chicago guy too, like being in the hub of it, I can usually tell. If you tell me like your nationality, I can tell kind of where your yard is. So like if you're on the deep south side, I know you're like a Hispanic carrier. If you're more like the northwest suburbs, you're like chances are you work for an Eastern European company, be it Balkan, Lithuanian, Romanian, and it's just great. It's like all of these cultures. Chicago is still one of those like towns that's self-segregated, but it's like so unified. Like, I mean, genuinely speaking, I think Chicago is like the best city in the world for like the amazing cuisine. I could drive 20 minutes anywhere, and I'm in an entirely different culture. So I love that about it. That's one thing that kind of made me fall in love with logistics.
I miss that about Toronto so much, man. Like I love food. Food is like the center of my like happiness. I enjoy food. And like being in Toronto is the best. You could go 10 minutes in any direction and eat like some food from a different country. And I mean, Serbia is getting there. We're like trying to kind of get some more cuisines going. But yeah, Chicago, Toronto, those are like just such multicultural cities. And you could like the food it really speaks for how diverse those places are.
Hey, down the line, when I get to go visit out some of my overseas dispatchers and stuff, I would like to do that. Some dispatchers have always told me, I should go down there. But if I get down to Serbia, I'll teach you how to make tacos, and you can open up yourself a Mexican restaurant over there.
Yeah, I need to know how to make those corn tortillas, the kind of deep fried ones, man. That's
oh yeah, no, the tortilla chips. It's so good for you, so bad for your waist, man. And I could not.
All right, you start out in logistics mad young. Start out in the shipping side of things, which is a cool story because I mean you don't really get too many people that have seen the shipping side, that have seen the warehouse stuff. I think that's a really cool place, an awesome place to start in logistics because I mean that's where it all begins, right? Like you have the driver, but the load always originates at the shipper, right? So that really is the ground floor in logistics when you think about it.
Yeah, it provided me a lot. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the insights I do in now. It's also why I like doing these like in-person customer visits. And literally today, like it was I on my way to work is where I used to work, my first job in logistics. So I decided to pass on in. I like doing I'm known here at Click for doing the customer visits, doing in-person solicitations. And I went to go visit my old boss, and I was like, hey, it's been a while. I was soliciting the guy next door, and just wanted to stop on in, and it was it really kind of humbled me to like how I began as a simple window clerk to like doing this, moving shipments, booking loads. It's like if you would have told 18-year-old Alex, hey, this job that you're taking is going to lead into a career that's like everybody, that post on LinkedIn that everybody makes, like, hey, I was doing this. This is what it taught me about B2B sales. It's really more like
like Biscuit concert. This is what I learned about B2B sales. Right?
Yeah, so it's like realistically, it's like logistics has taught me so much about life, about like, meeting people. It might not just be, I mean, I've learned a lot. I've had like good connections at one spot, put me onto another opportunity. And it's really something like with logistics, everybody talks about the relationships matter. I truly believe logistics is all built on relationships. Some of my leads, literally today, I'm visiting him. He's like, hey, I got a buddy of mine who works at this other shipper. He used to do your job like 10 years before you were there. He's looking for another supplier. He's like, let me take a couple of your business cards. I'm supposed to go out to see him for a drink this weekend. And I mean, it could lead to something. It could lead to nothing. But genuinely speaking, all of those people, they taught me a lot. I learned a lot from Reese. I learned a lot from Jim Stavropoulos. These are people I met while I was on my shipper side, as well as on the
Logistics is honestly just one of those industries where everybody knows that the more people you know, the better things can go. Like, I mean, I got some DMs recently. A guy was like, "Hey, I know you're kind of out in Serbia. Do you by chance know like a Serbian broker, like a European broker that can handle some ocean freight?" And I was like, "Well, coincidentally, I actually do. I'm like good friends with a guy here that does European freight." And it's just like the more people you know, eventually somewhere down the line, it'll come in handy, right? Like everyone in logistics is good at networking and keeping
yeah,
in
and
touch with people.
to this day, I still connect with carriers. There's like good carriers that I remember. I'll give them a ring, and I'm like, hey,
Still in business, you surviving the market.
yeah, like I follow up with them, like, hey, my focus is a lot more on reefer, food, and bev kind of customers, but I know some of them have some dry vans. They got some other equipment, so every now and then I'll hit them up. I'll be like, hey, Patrick, it's been a minute since we talked. How are you? How's everybody? Does Oleg still drive for you? Does uh, Reese still drive for you? Does X person so and
I
so
think the magic
still
really
drive
happens
for you?
actually care about people as people and not just view them as like a means to accomplish something. Right? Like when you look at the carrier and you get in like personal with them, you have lunches with them or you have phone calls that have nothing to do with moving freight. I mean, I think that's really where the value comes in because most people look at their network as just sort of a means to get things done. But I mean, like me and you, like we would be considered friends. Like I'll see you in real life eventually. Like those kind of things, you'll meet a lot of people that you can just actually be friends with, and it's not always about work. It's not always about moving freight. But when it is, it's great because you're good friends with those people. Right?
Yeah, no, funny enough, actually, I got a carrier. I haven't done work with them, I think, since I left my first brokerage job. Just lanes haven't really aligned. He moved from one company and stuff, but we're still connected on Instagram, other like spots, once that relationship kind of gets to that point. He's visiting Guadalajara, Mexico. I still got family down in Guadalajara. My uncle is actually he's gonna be hosting him when he goes on down there from Serbia. So good guy. He's visiting in there, and like my uncle, I told my uncle, I was like, hey, just show him a good time. If you could teach him around, I was like, he wants to like know the local spots, like take him out. He
Yeah,
wants to like not be
traveling
a
as a
tourist.
local is gonna be better than traveling as a tourist all day, every day. And I mean, my mom, like, she traveled a lot when I was young, and she always told me, man, the more people you know in different countries, the better your life will be because eventually you'll end up in those countries and you'll have a like couch to sleep on. And it started to make sense to me a lot in Europe because every country is like a stone's throw away, and like knowing people in different countries is cool. Like, I mean, I had like a trip planned to Cyprus, and my girlfriend's like, "Oh, I know somebody in Cyprus." I'm like, it's just like so random connections that you can have in life, right?
Yeah,
But anyways,
no.
let's get back to the structure here, man. What was your first logistics success? What do you think was the first moment in logistics where you said, like, like I've succeeded today, something has happened good,
I would say after landing with my first customer, there was only one lane that she was giving me. I mean, it was usually just Chicago down to Atlanta. It was a bread and butter lane for me that I knew from my carrier sales kind of
I
stuff.
love that lane as a carrier, man. It used to pay so good back in the
Yeah,
day.
and it was good. I had a good like network off of once I started like selling off, selling it to customers, and from there it was just usually for like about 3 weeks she was kind of testing me with it. I wasn't making a lot of money on it, maybe like 100, $200, not used to what I was seeing with some of the government contract stuff that I wasn't used to moving. And then all of a sudden, she starts popping off some like Los Angeles to Atlanta, some like border crossings, Loretto and stuff. And she was like, this one I have a tougher time covering. I don't mind if you charge me a little more, but if you can continue helping me. That was like my first, like, okay, if you help them out, they're gonna throw you a bone every now and then. That's where like the relationships came out, and that was like my first. I went from having just like 4 loads a week from her to having 18 loads a week, and it was like, wow, like it grew, and it opened up something, that kind of triggered a rush, and it was fun. I mean, it's fun. I think a lot of people forget that, when you're out here putting out these fires, connecting with the carriers, you're putting the puzzle together, it becomes fun. So I was like, oh, I'm actually having fun as a broker. Because for a while I wanted to go back to the shipper side. I was like, everybody made it seem so easy, but it's not.
Yeah. I was actually feeling that today, man. Like I hit a point where I was like, you know how much more simple dispatching 5 to 10 trucks is? Like you just gotta find 5 to 10 loads a day and like pre-book them and like just stay ahead. It's like so much more straightforward. Not to say it's easy and it takes no skill to be a dispatcher or a carrier. Of course, that's not true. But I was lost in the sauce today, man. Like loads were getting moved around, things were getting shifted, pickups were getting added, dropped. I was like, dude, like
No,
it's just
yeah.
a lot. Like people make brokers seem pretty chill. Like there is some really chill days, but like any job, it's like you said, it's a puzzle, and sometimes you're missing pieces of it, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I've seen it from like, at least I've never been on the dispatching side, but being on like I guess you could call it even the brokerage side, like the carrier side to like the shipper side. When I was on the shipper side, there was days where I'm like, man, I was like, I envy the broker that I'm talking to because I'm pretty sure he's gone. Like, he's out having beers.
In his G wagon,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that was the impression, that you come over here, you're making X amount of money.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I sometimes these carriers were like had such a good relationship with me. We're like we had like 6 different POs because we were a co-manufacturer ourselves. So like finding the right number that we had in our system was sometimes tough. So I would ask them, hey, give me the phone with like where I could see all the numbers. Like I'll type it in. I would see the rate confirmations, and I would never complain really about it. But I'd see what the carrier was being paid, what I was paying out, and I'm like, man, this guy's like in my mind, it's like he's sitting in some office downtown in the downtown of his like city, but then I'm on this side and it's like it's not as easy as it seems. Like
but see,
there's a
that's the thing
reason for
with
that
brokerage,
market.
right? Like you get the loads that keep the lights on, you get the loads that help you out to buy some stuff you want to buy, and then you get the loads where you get your ass kicked, and in the end, it all kind of averages out. And I mean, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Like I watched in my first week a couple loads go at a loss. So I was like, oh, like because it was DOT week, like the week I started in brokerage. I watched a couple loads move at a loss, and I was like, is that like supposed to happen? Like, is this what brokerage is? You come in and just start losing money? Like,
you're like, I should go back to the
yeah, I was like, I think I should go back to the dispatch side, man. But that was just like a unicorn week. It was DOT week.
No, and it's that it's genuinely, I think, in everything in logistics.
I think all sides, shipper, broker, carrier, we all have wins, we all have losses, we all have days that we're super green in the money, we all have days where we're red in the money. I mean, at the end of the day, you just got to pick what you enjoy doing. I got lucky. I enjoyed dispatch. I enjoy carrier sales that I'm doing now. I said I would never be a broker years ago, and here I am. So I don't want to say I'll never get into like sales and stuff like that. But I'm enjoying carrier sales. I like talking to the carriers. I like moving freight. But what was your first logistics fail on the flip side of the success?
My first.
I mean, is there a shipper story? I would hope there's
a
shipper.
Of course, as a shipper, no. It's actually my first fail was as a shipper. So,
yeah, I want to know. Did you like load the truck with the wrong freight?
Brother, it's kind of on the nose in that I loaded a truck that so I sent out the wrong product. I worked with we were a big co-manufacturer for Skinny Pop popcorn. So there was our numbers usually it ended. I mean, to this day it speaks of how like I remember a lot of like details. So there was like the 1200 SP, the PB. So SP was Skinny Pop. Back then, Amplify Snack Brands had a chip brand that's kind of like Cheetos called Pirates Booty, and it was PB. And yeah, no, when I first met John Cook, the whole reason that I got promoted at work was because John Cook, the warehouse manager, went in for a visit, but that's a story for a little later down. But anyways, Pirates Booty, he came in with the shirt, how I met him. There was a number that was very similar, 340 PB. It ended in 340 PB and 430 PB. Point is, I got distracted. I was really busy. It was a Friday, end of month. I sent out a truck with 430 that was supposed to be loaded with 340. I'm not sure how much, but point is, with like the transportation cost, the cost of the product, the
Yeah,
customer literally threatening our customers.
shipper, there's everything.
Yeah, I was told by my manager we were looking at a potential $70,000 hit.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, like that's like the value. Like that's, I mean, that's the number that they threw. So that was like my first big failure. I didn't catch it until we were
Yeah, but
doing our
imagine
event.
being like 18, 19, 20, you're like, just like, yeah, I just lost this company 70 grand potentially. I would go home and just stare at a wall for like the whole rest of my night. Like,
That happened on a Friday. You don't know how it happened on a Friday. It was the weekend of my birthday too. It was like Thanksgiving weekend. My
oh,
birthday.
yeah, you were like already at your birthday party at that point.
Yeah, I was like there, like I was sitting like this, like at the birthday party. Family friends are coming up to me, hugging me, and I'm like, I don't know, man. It's like I don't even know if I got a job when I walk
Yeah. This guy's like, I don't even think I got a job come Monday, bro.
Yeah, but no, I mean, it taught me. Well, I will say that I appreciated that. My boss at that moment, he pulled me to the side. One thing I really liked about him was he would pull you to the side when you made a big mistake. And he told me, he's like, "Hey, Alex, you're 18. You've only been doing this for 3 months. Uh, these kind of mistakes happen. It's better you get them out early. And let's just take a moment. Like, let's learn. What did you learn about this? You learned that logistics is you have to be multitask, but you got to, like, prioritize at hand.
Focus. Yeah.
This happens. He told me, he's like, I've personally made mistakes. I've seen, it's like, probably just as big as this one. I've seen people make bigger mistakes. Like, but I'm not going to fire you over this. Like, it's a learning opportunity. These kind
Yeah,
of
if you
things
do it one
happen.
more time, bro, you will be fired.
Yeah, it was like a kind of like, it's okay to do it, but don't ever let it happen again. And it's like,
Yeah,
but you
learn
learn
some
from it. It's like
situation.
that old saying, you got to let a kid burn his hand on the stove. I'm not sure if it's popular in like it's popular here in the Midwest. At least when I was growing up, my math teacher would always say it. So like if a kid burns his hand on the stove, they learn to never burn their hand on the stove, never to touch the stove again.
I mean, I'll give you a funny story about that, and it's the exact same thing. When I was a kid, this was like back in, I don't know, I guess the early 2000s. You know, when cars still had ashtrays and like they had like that lighter that you press, like that
Yeah, yeah.
circle. Yeah. So like I don't know, I was like I can't remember 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like really young kid, man. And I'm sitting in the back seat, and they have like the ashtray in the door handle, and it has its own lighter in the door handle in the back seat of the car. And me being like the kid that I was, I'm like, oh, what is this? Like I pressed it in, like forget about it. It gets like I pull it out. It's like I vividly remember this. It's like red hot, dude. And I for whatever reason, I just remember like putting my thumb like directly on it, and like it just burnt my finger immediately. I was like, whoa, like what is that? And like I didn't do it again, right? So it's definitely a learning moment.
No, of course. I mean, being on the shipper side is where I honestly got a lot of my mistakes out. Like, I mean, I would call that like the infancy of my career, and like kind of like how you were in your infancy. You learn a lot of mistakes there. Obviously, there's only certain mistakes that you could do in specific places. Just how there's only mistakes that you could do on the broker side. There are mistakes that are exclusive to the carrier side or the shipper side. But you know, when I got all of these out, I cannot see the comments.
No, there's no comment, bro. You made me think. You said there's like mistakes that you can make on like every side of the industry, and there's like this one mistake this one dispatcher made in my first company that all of my friend group, because we're all still friends from that first company, and like we always talk about it randomly. It'll come up. Where like this guy, like long story short, he ended up somehow at the operator for TQL, which I've never seen in my life. Like I don't know how I didn't even know they had an operator, dude.
Yeah,
And she's
usually
like.
somebody answers the
Like
phone.
and she asked him, like, are you calling for a load or are you on a load? And he's like, what? And she repeated the question. And he's like, oh, no, yeah, I'm calling for a load. And long story short, he booked the load. And I said on the Raycon, like, very clearly, like, low altitude load. It's a bags of chips from, like, I think from Cali, somewhere east. And it says, like, do not go through mountains. Like, keep low altitude, take the south route. And, like, this guy just screwed it up, bro. All the chips exploded, full claim on the load. And we were like, yeah, like. It's just one of those situations I'll never forget.
No, that happens on the shipper side too, man. I mean, you'd be shocked when you're getting like for one of our bigger distribution centers, it was a 5-digit number, and if you inputted one digit in wrong, you could be picking out an order that was set to go out 2 weeks in advance. But because the inventory was in the system, and as a window clerk, you would write that in until you check in. That's why I always am a big proponent of like telling drivers just from experience when I'm dispatching them out on the brokerage side, hey, when you do leave, confirm that they give you purchase order number 1005, because if they give you something else, like I'm telling you as a former shipper, if they have enough inventory on product, they might give you a load for like another day, and that load might be going somewhere else, and it could be entirely different product.
Yeah, I think when I was on the carrier side, I didn't understand that like there could be just some guy in a warehouse somewhere that made a mistake on a number, and that's how the load doesn't get loaded. And I used to always blame the broker. I'm like, how do you guys not know this? How do you not call the shipper and make sure the freight's there? And now I'm starting to realize, yeah, like there's just other humans in the supply chain that also can make mistakes, and it's not always the broker. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a shipper, I mean, at least I can tell you, it's more than just working. When you say shipping and receiving, it's more than just paying attention to the trucks that come in. I mean, there's inventory. I gotta like deal with supply, with like the supply planners. I gotta deal with like manufacturing planning. I gotta deal with inventory. There are certain loads that like when they come in, my forklift drivers have to step out of the forklift, scan it into the tablet, and then I have to go in and check it because they have to quarantine it. It could be, especially working in food product, when you get in raw materials such as like an allergen, like that has peanut, it becomes a process because there's a specific place we got to unload it in the warehouse. They can't be cross contaminated with anything else, and that takes away time. I mean, honestly, if I had something like that, it's already a headache in the back of my head, and then dealing with it. When those loads came, the amount of errors that were created by my entire team kind of went up. Like, there was more errors that day. So
more links in the chain, more chances for error. I mean,
yeah,
it's just what it is. But all right, man. Let's get into Click Logistics, your current occupation. What are you guys doing over there? What do you do specifically over there? I mean, tell me about Click and what your operation looks like.
So I am very glad that I can finally talk with somebody about Click, where they're at. I am like a huge person of like telling everybody what I do, even if it's like unwarranted. But no, yeah. So here at Click,
sure, this is the Wendy's.
Yeah, but like no. So here at Click, I am a business development manager for them. We are a brokerage. We're a broker and a carrier. So our carrier authority has been active since 2017. When I first met Radu and Tatiana, they were looking for somebody kind of like that had like a different approach of going into business. One thing they liked about me was that I'm a former shipper, and I go into these things like thinking like a shipper. They come in, they bring in the expertise of being a former carrier. The people that we're hiring, they're people that have been in this industry that have some kind of like background from the shipper or carrier side. And one thing I could tell you about asset-based companies, a lot of asset-based companies say, yeah, we're asset-based, but their customer will never get one of their trucks. We try to go
they
after
have one broken truck in the parking lot just so they can like have a VIN number that says that they're asset-based.
Yeah, and truly, I mean, on the amount of loads that I've put our assets on, I could say it's a good amount that we've put our assets. We try to really link our assets, so that's something we really try to do. We really try to like bring out that attention, that like stuff that a lot of brokers, and it's not through their fault, they just genuinely wouldn't know unless they've been on the asset side or have been on a shipping dock. And that's just kind of the experience we want to bring out to like our clients, our people, our target audience. It's like, this is what we offer as with like this experience that we have. Like, let us show you kind of like a unique new perspective to it. We're not just calling and saying we have trucks in your area. It's like, hey, if I tell you, hey, you're local to us. I noticed that from a couple of the calls I've made in, you're telling me that, you get some of your material out from California, or you're sending out to California. Well, my trucks are constantly going down to California. I can not only send you the Simsera link, but I can pull like Raycons and loads from our system that shows like, hey, in the past month, we ran 20 loads out that week. Like, we got 20 loads out that way. We got a load in. So if you're hauling in materials, like, let us help you with your inbound.
I've heard a lot of the horror stories with asset-based companies where brokers have like no incentive to use the assets because they get penalized, right? Like they have to pay their own assets more, they lose money. And a lot of those agents are like people that own their own freight. They like don't want to use their assets. I've heard these people, they tell me firsthand, they're like, I don't want to use my assets because I'm losing money that could go in my pocket. And I mean, like, I guess there's some asset-based companies that just make it kind of a nightmare for the brokers, for everybody. But it's good to hear, asset-based companies say, yeah, I do use my assets. I want to use my assets,
Yeah, we want to show you, uh, it's kind of the thing, like, well, if we're going to be selling that we're the best, we got to stand by that with our assets, And
Yeah. We're asset-based, but I don't want to ever give you my
assets. It's like you get what I'm saying. It's like you could just say we're a division, a sister company at that point. If I understand if you're saying assisted, but if you're gonna say you're based with assets, I think you should really put your money where your mouth is, and that's something I really liked about my first meeting ever when I was getting hired here at Click, was when they told me, we're not afraid to put our assets in, and we've done it. We've had to, we've been in an area where we couldn't find a carrier for a specific load, going out of one tough area to another one. We've deadheaded a truck once 600 miles because we do not want to fail that customer. So that's
Dude,
kind
I
of like,
did that. I had my best customer, I guess, broker, however you want to call it, when I was a carrier, and he paid me so much money all the time, and he just gave me the best freight ever. Like, he was my priority broker that I had to it was no fail freight for this guy, and I did the math on it. This was back when the market was it's not much different than it is now. But I did the math on it, and this guy paid me so much money on this freight that I took one of his loads 1,000 miles from Illinois to Mass, and then just I told my guy, I'm like, yo, just turn around and go right back to that shipper you're picking up again the next day or two. And we literally just deadheaded the truck because I was like, I can't fail this freight. I have my truck. I'm like, I'm not gonna screw around with this. I'm just gonna turn the guy around and just send them right back. So, honestly, having assets as a broker is a huge thing that helps you, if done correctly.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, we got 100 trucks we're looking to add right now. As it stands, we have about 10 trucks. Specifically, their only job, we're paying somebody's salary, placed around the country. Their only job is to sit at home and wait for a repower or recovery load.
Yeah, that's the best. I remember being a huge carrier company, and we had just straight up recovery drivers, and that's awesome if you have that,
And it's a huge advantage. You don't really hear too many people doing that.
Yeah, it's really rare, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. If I was a carrier that had more than 15 or 20 trucks, I would definitely leave a guy or two or a person or two just in case. I need to repower something. I would just pay them a salary and be just chill at home. And if I ever need you, I'll call you. That's a really, really, really powerful tool for anybody moving freight.
Specifically, I mean, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, it's an expense, but
it's an expense, of course. But
the idea is that it's like insurance, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it,
Oh, of course.
Another thing too, at least I'm doing, I think you've seen it, I've posted it a couple of times on LinkedIn. I'm very big on going and visiting people in person. The amount of clients that I've actually landed after visiting in person, it's greater than clients I'm landing through cold outreaches, through cold emails, cold calls and stuff. It's I think as a shipper, it's nice to know, to have the face of the person who's going to be moving my freight come in and say, hey, I'm Alex with Click. I'm the guy that you're trusting. This is what my face looks like. If your freight ever goes missing, you can go to the police and say, I don't know who moved it, but this is the guy at this company. This is how he looks like. Go find him.
Yeah, I think in-person stuff is really cool. I got lucky enough to, as now that I'm in brokerage, I got to go meet one of my carriers that's also freight for me out here. It was cool, man. It was really awesome. And they were surprised because there's not a lot of brokers that are out here, feet on the ground out here. And I went to their office and I asked the guy, because they had these cool notebooks, and I use a notebook for scheduling. I was like, hey man, can I have a notebook by chance? This guy was so happy because he's never had a broker visit them, never had a customer visit them. And he's like, oh, I'll give you 5 notebooks, 10 pens. And they did the most Balkan thing I've ever seen. They gave out lighters. I was like, this is awesome, dude. Branded lighters. I was like, that's the most over here kind of situation.
And you know what? That's honestly unique when you do that. I'm known Chicago is very different stuff. So if there's something I know culturally unique about that, me, I'm of Hispanic descent. I'm Mexican. From my parents are from Mexico. Instead of showing up with donuts, if I know that it's I'm reaching out to a Hispanic shipping manager, Hispanic decision maker. Around my house, there's a Mexican bakery, every morning at 5 in the morning, they get up, they make fresh bread. There's just like they're like delicacies. They're like bakeries. They're called conchas, which literally translates over to shells. Very good.
Yeah, like a conch shell.
Yeah, like a conch. Yeah. So they're very good pastries, and I bring it in, and it reminds them like when they see that. But I don't just do that for my customers. I do that for my carriers too. You know, I have paid for like my carriers pizzas. I'm like telling them, hey, are you guys? If I was like, you're dispatching in the U.S. side, is there any chance I could send them pizzas? And is there any chance on your European side, like you tell me how much it's gonna cost to get them pizzas, and I'll you know I'll send over the money
We
as
had
well.
operators like back in the day. They used to buy an office of like 150 employees, like these owner ops that like are from over here. They
Yeah,
used to send like literally they would call and have their family pay for it and send a office of 150 people, dude, just like kilos and kilos of barbecued meat. And I was like, it's just crazy. You got a guy in America who's like feeding people in Serbia, dude. Like, like
no,
logistics is just so like you can do it anywhere in the world, and it's crazy to see how much it affects like international stuff. You know.
it's gonna sound so dumb, but one thing I noticed in sales or just in general in relationships, my grandma every time she would feed me, she's like always has like these like older Mexican sayings or like I call them older people sayings, if that makes sense. One of the sayings that she's always saying is like, the way to a man's heart is through his
Yeah,
stomach.
stomach.
And,
Yeah,
and like now that I'm in sales, it's like the way to anybody's like heart is through their stomach. You show up with snacks, and I just think about it too. It's like, okay, if I'm a shipper, some random guy's coming in, I'm gonna be like 10 times more excited to see you. If you're like, hey, there's this guy here with pizza, or hey, there's this guy that just
yo, dude, if a guy showed up to my office and was holding like a huge, nice hamburger, like I would be like, yeah, dude, like you got 10 minutes. Let's sit down. Let's chill.
I
You
got
know,
20
what do you
minutes.
want to talk about? I got 10 minutes.
No, yeah, it's the funniest thing ever. I mean, there's like stuff like that that I really like about Click is that we want to like personalize. Like I mean, the name Click, like for me, it's like okay, when things click, like out of nowhere, you hear the thing like oh, suddenly it just clicked in my head, kind of thing, and it's like that's what we want to do. We want to make sure things
Yeah,
fall in
I
line.
even hit on it in the motto. You know, you guys have really nailed the marketing in 2024. I mean, you're not just another boring corporation just pumping out like the same generic kind of stuff. Like, oh, work with us, we're the best. Here's a picture of our employees. Like, I mean, you got to be different these days, especially in markets like this. You really got to either be in a niche. If you're in a niche, you just have to be personal. You can't just be a corporate robot in this type of an environment in logistics, right? You need to like stand out somehow. You need to have a personality. You need to be like yourself. You can't just be another boring company doing boring things because I
No, of
mean, it's
course.
just old and it's overplayed at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you see, it's actually stories. So, like, one thing I like is they'll share our stories, kind of like how we came, and it's human. It's like, I started off like this, we started off like that. One thing that really resonated with me, it's like, when you're talking on it, it's like the people I'm working with are really chasing their vision of the American dream. So, being a first generation, Mexican American here, it's like I'm chasing my American dream doing this, and then I look at it, it's logistics is such a diverse industry. Like you got people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, and everybody's just trying to carve out their version of the American dream. And it's like you're meeting with different people. Sometimes I've also noticed when I go meet like these people, like there was a customer I went to go visit, one of my produce customers. It's a bread and butter local Chicago guy. He was telling me about how like the industry has changed. He's been working in produce, routing his own trucks since 1989.
Yeah.
When I told him, I was like,
Crazy when you
man, I
meet
was,
those people. They've been like driving trucks since before there was like any computers in them. Like it's just wild. Like it's
yeah.
wild.
He was telling me, he's like, man, it was like so crazy. He's like, in today's market, produce is like something, everybody chases after, that there's freight there. But he was telling me that there was a point in time where nobody wanted to touch it. Like there was niche brokers that there was like, he said, like off the top of my hand, he's like, there's like 5 brokers I could tell you from back in the day that wanted to touch me.
Yeah, and I
But
mean, I could imagine the technology advances we've had with reefers and just equipment and cold storages and I just can't even like imagine how things were done way back in the day. Like even like the 80s and 90s is not even far enough back. I'm thinking like, how were things done in just how did people truck produce? How is it possible? You know, back in those days, I guess things were a lot more local. You weren't being able to do long hauls of crazy stuff. You'd have definitely a lot more like damaged loads. You'd have a lot more like inedible loads back in the day, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, there's my funny enough, like I touch on it. My former boss that I went to go visit today, Reese, he was telling me, he's all like, he's like back in the day. So fun fact about me, at my first job, I went by the nickname Manny. There is no Manuel or Manny in my name. It's just when I was on the shipper side, my dad, there was already another father-son duo working with us in the shipping department, Armando and Armando Jr. So Armando went by Armando and Junior went by Junior. He was the first one, so everybody knew him as Junior. So when we were first working there, I was always getting called. They were calling Alex, and me and my father would walk to the office, or we would both answer like, "Yes, what can we help you with?" To the point that my boss is like, "Hey, Alex, is there another name I could call you, man?" He's like, I don't want to call you like Alex too or something. He's like, I was like, no, just come up with the name. I was like, I don't care what you call me, like as long as it's not offensive. It's like, cool. From this day forward, you're gonna be named Manny. And it got so much to the point that like everybody at that company thought my name was actually Manny.
Yeah.
So like when they would see a bill of lading signed or something like that I needed to approve or write off on, they would see, oh, Alex. They're like, hey, why is the forklift driver from shipping approving somebody's overtime? They're like, no, it's not. It's his son, the supervisor. It's like it's Manny approving.
Yeah, dog.
But yeah, back to that
If you
point.
could explain Click, in sort of an elevator pitch, what do you guys do different than your competition? What would you say it like kind of sets you guys apart in the best ways?
Um, Truly being like asset backed and having industry experience from like not just being brokerages. Not saying that it's bad. Genuinely, in any walk of logistics, I think it's a lot of people come in. It's a very low ceiling to enter. But the thing that separates Click is that we're formed of like former carriers, former shippers. So when you bring that kind of expertise together, it it orientates our pitch more. Like you tell me, hey Alex, I'm a flatbed customer, right? I tell you, hey, how is the seasonality with your jobs? Like, does it pick up more spring? When you're hauling in your coils that are going into like from the steel mill over to a processing and manufacturer, and that kind of helps out. Like, hey, I work with X and X. I've done work, maybe not directly under my brokerage, but our carrier side has done it. We understand how it's done. Let's like pitch that, and it opens up the door a little bit more than just being another generic no asset brokerage. Not that there's anything wrong.
Of course, there's nothing wrong with it, but at the end of the day, those guys that started their brokerage in their garage or their basement, never been a carrier, never been a shipper. They just there's nothing wrong with it, but at the end of the day, it's not like you can say that having experience on the carrier side, having experience on the shipper side isn't an asset versus those guys, right? Like you can't sit there and say that somebody who's only ever known brokerage, it's not an asset to know the other parts and have different ideas within your brokerage, right? I mean, that's always going to be a benefit to you that you've done the carrier side, you've done the shipper side, that you understand more facets of it than just the broker side of things.
One thing that I will say that like genuinely it helps like in the fraud prevention too. In one of the videos that we've done that we send out to like our customers, and like we have this like form where we like do educational videos for them, kind of like what to look out for. Our boss Radu, our operations manager and vice president of operations, he explained to me from the carrier side something that being a shipper I never knew. Riveted bolts where you open up on the handles on the barn doors on the trailers. He said if they have a drill or if they have a hole, like it looks like you could drill them out. He said that carrier can take off the seal on your trailer. He could steal your freight and you would never be you would be none the wiser to it. You would think, hey, me as a shipper, I would think I'm disputing with my vendor, hey, you short sent me 30 pallets of X, and without like a clue, like that's something that you look. That's an advantage that you bring out. Another thing as like me being a shipper that like a lot of brokers, it's a joke that like I see sometimes. I see in the freight caviar, like I think it was Reed who posted it. It's like, trucks overweight, the meme where they slap the buttons like, he's just slapping on the slide the tandems. As a shipper, I know that you don't always just slide the tandems. The very first thing when they tell me is like, hey, I'm a little, it's like, okay, don't just slide the tandems. I look at, okay, how was it loaded? What is it that you're picking up? How was it distributed? Did they chimney block it? Did they, how was this loaded? Was this put in chimney block? Did they load it straight all together? Because, I mean, if you're picking up a load at 42,000 pounds at 18 pallets, it needs to be evenly distributed. You're putting 2 pallets in the front, 1 in the middle, 2 again, 1. Kind of you're building it out like that. And that's something you can only really know with years of experience or having a background, like seeing it being done in front of you.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I'm not saying that if you haven't been a carrier or a shipper, you're never going to be a good broker. That would be an insane statement.
Hey, no.
Being able to say, like, our team has X carriers, our team has X shippers, it definitely brings more opinions and more viewpoints and just random little things that, people collect over the years in those roles into the broker side of things, which is really cool, right?
It also helps out with the sales cycle too. I mean, me as a shipper, being emails, I was getting emails even in the slow market. 2019 was a relative slow freight market, and that's where I was like, really cutting my teeth. I was like getting most of my experience in on the shipper side. When I was getting calls and stuff, I won't lie, if you were soliciting me 3 times a week, it was annoying. But if you were soliciting me once a week, twice a week, you told me it's like, okay, I pay attention. Everybody's sending me the generic email, like, plus this. And so it's like,
I think, a guy, it's funny you say that though, because I had a guy who's been hitting me up. I mean, this was like a month or 2 ago. And this guy hit me up, like, I swear to God, every 48 hours with like some type of email asking me if I wanted to take a tech demo. It's just some random guy I've never seen before. I don't even know if he has, I don't even know how he got my email. I guess because it's on my LinkedIn. He doesn't even have a LinkedIn account, like just some random guy. And after like the 19th email, like, because I thought it was funny at a certain point, because it was like every 48 hours I would come to work and this guy's email would be sitting there. And after like the 19th email, I finally told him, like, you know what, like, I kind of respect how persistent you've been. Like, it's like comically persistent at this point. Like, you are not giving up. I let him do the tech demo. I mean, I can't even remember what it was. It wasn't a very good product. But the point being, it was like a pretty bad product, to be honest. But the point is that, like, he didn't even annoy me. Like, I just kind of respected it, right? Because most people will try like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But this guy didn't give up. Like, he just didn't give up. And it was always a personal email that I could tell he typed with his hands, because it was like short but personal, and like it didn't seem very like robotic. And I was like, like, I respect this guy's hustle. Let me give him 20 minutes, at least if it helps him in a metric side of things that he got a tech demo, So, I mean, certain things you got to respect the hustle sometimes, man.
I think being in sales, you respect that a lot more. Like, I'm a little bit more receptive to like a cold outreach. Literally last weekend, was it a weekend or 2 ago? I forgot. I was trying to cover a very hot load that fell off. It was in a kind of a dead spot. I was fielding in calls. I had somebody call me to my cell phone, and sorry about that. Somebody's leaving from my office, but they called me in, and she told me, she's like, hey, I got your number off Zoom Info. I'm like, no, that's great. I was like, I really appreciate it. Like, I understand what you're trying to do. I was like, I will give you 2 to 3 minutes. Can you send me an email if you're on Zoom Info? Can you confirm if you got my email? I was like, just send me an email. I won't forget about you. I'll look it in. I'll look over your product, and I'll be honest with you if it's something I'm in the market for or not yet. But I was like, if you could just give me 5 minutes, I'm like, you really just hit me at a bad time. And it's just that reminding that people are on the phone. I think also I'm a big like believer of like karma and stuff like that. When I was on the shipper side, I used to try to take in I was a second shift guy, but I kind of also worked split shifts. From the time I was there from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., if I would get like, I would make it a priority a week to like take 3 calls from a random like provider, whatever it was. I would take the call, and I would just be like, look, I'll take down your information, but right now I'm happy with the guys I'm with. I was like, I don't see a point of like using you yet, but things happen. I might need to fall off. Things happen. We might not be a good match for them anymore. Let's circle back on this in like 2 months.
But I think it comes down to, in my opinion, like, I don't mind cold outreach. I really do try. And like, since I started this whole podcast thing, I've I've had more meetings after work, meetings like I think I've gone through more meetings in the past 3 months than I probably have in the past 5 years, dude. And like it's completely fine to me because like that's my time. I'll spend it, it can lead to something, it can lead to nothing. But I also believe, just like you, in karma kind of thing where these are people, they're humans, they're trying to sell a product. Some of them, this is their only job. They got hired to be a salesman. Some of them own most of them. I mean, most of the meetings I take are people that built the tech or built the product or just some high level type of people. But at the end of the day, I just feel like, man, if you do it the right way, I'll give you 10 minutes of it. I have no issues scheduling 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 20. I don't care. But it's when people do it the wrong way. Like when I just get DM'd in LinkedIn, like just some like AI script, I'm like, bro, like this is not how you do this. If you like message me as a human and say, hey, like I have this product, do you by chance have like 10 minutes maybe to talk about it? This is what it is. Quick, simple, human approach. Like, yeah, you know what? Like, sure, I'll give you 10 minutes on that. You hit me with a paragraph, Chat GPT, LinkedIn DM, man. There's no chance I'm reading that. No chance I'm taking a meeting with you. Like, you just gotta be personal about it, right? Like, I don't mind. Like they always say, people buy stuff from people. They don't buy stuff. Like, I don't mind dealing with people. But when you're just cold blasting me on like some AI scripts, man, like just leave me alone, dude. Like,
I think it also depends on the person. I could tell you from sales, some people are more direct. They respond better to like direct. This is my service. I'm Alex with Click. I have a fleet of 100 trucks. We're local to Chicago. Boom. Some people like that. Some people want to be sold the experience too. Like me, I'm a very social person. I like the experience of things. So I'm still kind of a person that likes to shop at the mall instead of online.
Oh, dude, I love them all, bro. I mean,
So
I
it's like,
honestly
it's an experience.
They clown on me all the time because Serbia doesn't have Amazon, but we have like something kind of similar. But people always forget that I lived in Canada my whole life. It's not like I didn't have Amazon, bro. I never bought stuff on the internet in my entire life. I have this philosophy of like spending money and not getting it right away. I feel like I'm getting scammed, and like I don't like buying. Like, yeah, I just feel like I'm getting scammed, bro. Like I just lost $700 and I have to wait like a day or two or three to get something. Like I don't know, it doesn't feel, and like I like going to the mall, I like walking around, seeing people, I like people watching, I like touching the stuff I'm about to buy and staring at it. I love them all, dude. I'll never be an online shopper.
It's an experience too, and I mean, one thing I like about Click, and I'm not afraid to say it. A little something about my personal life. I recently became single at the end of last year, so I started going out to like bars and nightclubs. Sometimes when I'm at these bars and nightclubs and I meet some people, it's been accountants. Like I've literally have pulled some like form of like leeway because like I'll come back in like on Monday and I'm like typing into my CRM. It's like, met Angela or met David, accountant for this, says that they ship out. And it's the funniest thing ever because it's like, hey, I wanted to buy you a drink, but now that you told me you're an accountant at like this type of company, it just became business for me. So like, here's my business card. Any chance I can get your freight? And it's funny too because it's like Johnny Rogers, I'll give him a huge shout. I do like the sales tips that he gives. I think even you had commented at one time, like he said that he was going on a cruise or something. And he was gonna be like giving him out like he was gonna be giving out his business cards, but he was like in line.
He's like, I'm going on a cruise with my family. I'm like, how many business cards are you gonna hand out, bro?
But there's a truth to it. Like,
true, yeah. It's funny, but it's like very true. Yeah, it's good networking, man. It's a good thing to do.
Like when I was on my last trip, I went out to Florida not too long ago for a convention for a conference down in Miami. The guy next to me is an accountant. He was out here for a corporation that works out of Florida, but he was coming to audit the warehouse here in Chicago. He's all like, oh, this is what you do? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you audited the warehouse? He's like, yeah, I can get you in connect. Again, I wasn't trying to be annoying, salesy. No, but once I found that out, it's like, I have a stick of gum here. Take a stick of gum for like this. And before we left, it's like a business card. It could lead to something. It could lead to nothing. But it doesn't hurt to like let people know, like how John Rogers says it. Let people know what you do, the problem involved. Like it costs nothing. Literally, sales is a commission-based job. The more people who know like what it is that I do, the better it is for me.
I mean,
Somehow,
it made me
somewhere.
laugh though, man. One time, I have the best version of that story, and it happened in Chicago too. I don't know. This happened years and years ago. I can't even remember anymore who told me the story through all the people I've met in logistics. But long story short, there's like a guy from over here, and he went to go like work in the carrier company's office in Chicago for like 5, 6, 7 years. And he was sitting in a bar somewhere in Chicago. It's like 9 p.m. at night. He's chilling. He's having a beer. And there's like a guy sitting next to him at the bar. And like, it's like a normal thing. Like eventually, you just like say like, hey, man, like, what do you do? And this guy that I met, he was like the head of the ELD department for the Chicago carrier. And the guy next to him was like, oh, yeah, man, I'm a DOT officer. And this guy was like, oh, fuck, bro. Like, let's maybe not talk about work, bro. Like, it was just one of the best versions of that story.
It's funny too, like the amount of people that I meet and do stuff like sometimes it also backfires too, letting people know what you do. Like
like knowing a lot of people is like actually sometimes bad because you like know too many people sometimes. Like it sometimes is not a good thing,
No, there was one time, you know how brokers tend to have like there's like a used car salesman like kind of thing, connection with like brokers. I remember once I was out, this is like with an ex-girlfriend of mine. It was the first time, naturally in conversation, when you're meeting family and stuff, like, what do you do for a living? Her cousin's, unbeknownst to me at the time, her cousin was a owner operator. Had his own MC. And I can tell
I
you,
can make for an awkward conversation, bro.
it makes it like they're like, oh, what do you do? I was like, oh, well, I'm in truck. He's like, oh, really? What do you do? I'm like, oh, well, I'm a freight broker. Mind you, this is like baby broker Alex. Just became a freight broker in this. He's like, oh, you're a freight broker. He's like, man, you are the scum of the earth, my guy.
Yeah, get the fuck out of my house.
Like, it was just that. Me and him were like, he did not like me for 6 months until one day he gave me a call. He's like, hey, I'm in this really tight spot.
Yeah, you have a load, bro.
Do you have a load? And I was like, I personally don't have a load in any of my accounts, but let me check over here. Did from there his like entire trajectory. I was like, I even sent it in like the chat in our like internal chats. I'm like, hey man, this guy really effing hates me. If you could help him out with like a decent rate, don't try to like rip him off. Just, I'm not saying lose money, but if you could pay him a decent rate, he got a good rate like on the first quote. From there, me and him were like best friends. Like any family outing and stuff that I was invited to.
That's like, honestly, that's literally what the industry needs. Like the owner ops and carriers need to just form a alliance and a relationship with the brokers. That's like literally like a metaphor for what this industry needs to be, bro. And it's like a funny one because it's a personal like story.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of people. It's funny too. Like a lot of things, like me. I was literally talking with like, and again, it's so fresh on my mind because I saw him today. But he's telling me, he's like, me being honest, Alex Reese. He was telling me like, if you introduce me like who your carrier is, I'm not gonna cut you out because I know that you're a broker, you're a middleman, and I wouldn't meet this person if it wasn't for the connection that you made between us. He's like, I'm honest in my work. Obviously, there's a price point, but I believe in having integrity. And if I tell you that I'm paying you and I'm using you for your carrier connections, I want to speak to your carriers because sometimes there's some stuff that it's just quick, like, hey, go to door 5. Like if I know you're coming in and like I could tell them, hey, you're coming in appointment 7:30, go into door 5. We're going to be waiting for you. Just back into door 5 and then come check in for the product.
Yeah, but that's the thing, man. When you're doing business the right way with the right people, there shouldn't be this shroud of who's going to screw me over, who's going to stab me in the back, who's going to steal my shipper, who's going to steal my carrier. Like, if you're doing just business with people that are normal people and doing good business, like that's what it is. Like the shipper should be able to talk to the carrier should be able to talk to the broker, et cetera, et cetera. The driver should be able to talk to everybody. I mean, business has a way to be done right. And it's just a shame that there's so much scamming and so much backstabbing in this industry, because when things happen and you work with the same people for like 10 years, it's so easy. It's so chill. Like that broker I was talking about earlier, like working with that guy's the easiest thing in the world. He's like, hey, I have this load for 2 weeks from now. Do you want it? Yeah, sure. Like 2 emails get sent or ACON gets sent, the load gets picked up. Like it's never a headache, man. Yeah. And that's just like, it needs to be like that, but it's just it's unfortunate, man, the way that it is.
Something I will say that I'm noticing, I learned from somebody who had been doing it. So fun fact about my old boss: I'm 24. If you add 2 years to my age, that's how long he's been doing this for. He's been doing this literally. He told me, he's like, I think I got hired on your birthday to like work at this spot. So he started in November of '97. I was born November of '99. But the thing he told me is like, technology was fun for a while, but like it's like a cycle. Like, technology has come in, it's ruined it. Like I'm noticing the reason I say like I'm big on going face to face is because I learned from old school guys, and a lot of people are starting to revert to wanting to do business kind of the old school way, which is like, a handshake, meeting you, because there's a component of trust that can't be established over the phone.
Dude, there's a part in that sentence that makes me so happy because so I do all my podcast scheduling with like a Google sheet that only I have access to for like weeks and weeks in advance scheduling. And then I have a pen and a paper. And every night before I go to sleep, I write what meetings or podcasts or what I have to do tomorrow, work related, like just anything that's very important for my next day. Yeah. So then every morning when I wake up, I open it and I'm like, oh, this is what I have to do today. I have been getting so much flack, man, from everyone ever. Like, why don't you use Google Calendars? Why don't I have a Google Calendar invite? Why don't you use my Calendly? Why don't you have a Calendly? And it's like, dude, like, I just want to do business the way it used to be. Like, this is the date that we're doing something. Can you just remember it? Can you write it down somewhere? Like, why do I have to send 15 calendar invites to schedule something? Like, can you do a little bit of work too? Can you get a sticky note, bro? Like a pen and a sticky note, and you just stick it on your desk. Like, it doesn't have to be so complicated. I don't want to have 7 accounts. Then you have to like Microsoft Teams. You have to have Google Meets. You have to have like 15 different streaming platforms. You have to like 18 different calendar apps. It's like, dude, can you just get a pen and a paper? And can you remember one date? Like, can you schedule with me one time on a pen and a paper? Is that going to kill you? Like, I don't know, man. I'm really also going kind of backwards with the technology thing too.
It's natural. I think when you have an excess of stuff, things are coming back, and that's something I think makes Click unique. It's finding that like unique sweet spot between tech and old school way of doing things.
Yeah,
the tech is nice,
is great and cool, but you need the tech, right? Like you need the tracking tools, you need these sort of things. But like you said, there's just an abundance of it, and there's too many. Like if there was one universal calendar app that everyone in the world used, one calendar app, I would be like, all right, fine, dude, no problem. I'll get the stupid app. But it's like you have to have the Google Calendar and then this. And like when you use that stuff, I don't know, bro. It's too much. There's too much going on. There's too many apps. There's too many calendars. There's too many things, bro. Like it starts to make it more complicated the more tech that we get, right? Like there has to be a sweet spot between old school.
There's definitely that. There's like stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're noticing it too. Like, I mean, you're coming from the dispatch side. I'm 100% sure you're implementing stuff that at Hammer Logistics that, you would probably wish that as a carrier you would have had it. It forms for better carrier relations, it forms for making stuff easier. There's stuff at the shipper side that I wish my broker would have communicated to me and my carriers would have communicated to me that like now I go ahead and I do it without asking. Like, okay, like you send me over the POs. I always ask, hey, can you send me all of the purchase order numbers? Can you send me all of the numbers associated with this? I'm plastering it on the Raycon so that way if the driver, like he gives one number and it's wrong, he's got 4 other numbers to give and he doesn't need to call me. He doesn't need to call Track and Trace. He doesn't need to call anybody in the office. He gets
I think trucking and logistics is very simple by nature and people just make it too complicated with tech, with lying, with this, with that. At the root of it, it's just picking stuff up, dropping it off. It shouldn't be that hard, but anyways, it is what it is. We're past the hour mark. Let's start wrapping things up. So Click, asset-based, actually uses their assets, knows how to be people, personal company, knows how to make some nice content. They're not so robotic. And I mean, yeah, nothing but good things about you, man, and Click. I'm happy you're over there. I mean, you seem happy, definitely happy fit for you. So
no, of course.
We're getting into what is your craziest logistics story, and try to keep it like don't make a 10-minute story, please, bro.
No, of course, yeah. I could say the craziest logistics story I ever sent. A driver and a shipper found love on one of my loads.
Like what? What do you mean, bro?
So I sent the driver in. It wasn't a super hot load, but it was kind of like an important load. I set the local Chicago
A
carrier.
super hot shipper though, or like it wasn't a hot load, but it was.
It was an important load, but it wasn't like it was like medium, like mid importance, you know.
Yeah, it was like a
We
war
needed to
load.
deliver a certain day.
Like
So,
war.
anyways, I know the shipper because they're a friend. This manager is the sister of a friend of mine, so that's how I had my in. And I text her, I'm like, hey, I sent in the guy, is he? And he's like, yeah. It's like, oh, I was like, I'm just kind of worried. He was like upset that you guys might take forever. It's like, no worries. He's talking to my clerk. Like he's actually like she's calming him down. Like they're having a conversation. Like I think they might even exchange numbers. So I'm like, cool. Didn't make anything of it. Anyways, Saturday happens, the weekend goes, he gets loaded. Monday comes, we're checking. I'm like, okay, why hasn't he left? This like there was a problem with their tracking, whatever. The load goes back to the yard. They find out that like for 2 days, the driver goes silent. The truck is abandoned at the yard. The carrier is like wondering what went on. Mind you, the driver didn't come into work on Monday. The local driver didn't come into work on Monday to unhook from his trailer. The shipping clerk didn't come into work on Monday. It turns out these two hit it off and like love at first sight. They ran off to California for like a week vacation.
Bro, like it's probably actually one of the craziest logistics stories I think I've ever heard. Yeah, like literally one of the craziest logistics stories.
And it's like, who does the customer blame at that point? Because maybe it's my fault for sending that driver in, but if we're being honest, the shipper's employee also had something to do there, like with why the load was late. So it's like,
hey man, at the end of the day, who cares about the load, man? Two people found love, and that's the moral of the story. So.
It's great. I mean, I played Cupid, so I was Cupid in logistics.
All right, man, that's a cool story. I like that one. Moving on to one of the last questions. What is your favorite joke? I think I asked you this before, and I don't think you had one. But do you have one?
No, I actually might have a joke, but I'm trying
Bro, I hate this. Nobody has jokes anymore because we just send each other the jokes. Like the memes have ruined people's jokes because you just send the jokes now. You don't have to think of any.
One joke I probably do. It's maybe not a joke, but it's more of like something that I find funny. It's kind of industry related. It's when everybody asks like, hey, how hard is it? Like outside of it, like essentially you're just sending something from point A to point B. They don't realize that to get something from point A to point B, it's like you have to cross 27 points before you get from point A to point B. They're like, it's so simple. I'm like, I wish it was as simple as getting stuff from Chicago to Atlanta, but you don't understand how like complicated all the steps it is. So it's like how funny everyone else thinks this job is so easy, but when you look at it, it's almost funny. Like you got to jump through hoops to get stuff which should be routinely easy done. So
yeah, it's easy on the outside, not easy once you get in. But I think your joke there is more of like, how hard is it that you just pause? That might be the joke. That got me laughing. So.
It's like, how hard is it? Like you start thinking, it's like, no, it's like extremely hard. Yeah, logistics can be a joke sometimes. Like my humor is very dry, ironic. So when I see it, like it's very on the nose that I landed in an industry that's like this, that's like complicated. It's weird. You have crazy stories one day, you have days that like it's like butter.
Logistics can either be a free paycheck or the hardest money you've ever earned, and there's not too many days where it's in between. And honestly, the in between days are fun because when it's an easy day, you're kind of bored, and when it's a hell day, you're like, it's kind of a lot. But like those nice in between days, where you're working hard, so you have like one or two fall offs, one or two truck breakdowns, like those are the days I live for because it's exciting, but it's not overwhelming. And logistics is just chill in that sense, where every day is going to be different. The level of difficulty of each day is dependent on so many different variables, and you just never you can't ever be upset about a day in logistics when you come to work because you don't know is it going to be hard, easy, chill, not chill, like. It's just always going to be something new that's going to happen. So.
It's the funniest thing to ever because you'll be out and it's like being in logistics. 3 simple words can ruin your night.
Bro,
like
what is this? Like,
I think
how
it's because
many letters are there between A and B?
There should be 0, but if you work in logistics trying to get something from point A to point B, you feel like there's 3 alphabets in between point A and point B.
Is there actually a punchline, Jim, or is that just some like nonsense sentence that I just had to read out loud. I wonder if he's actually got a punchline to that. Yeah. But all right, man, wrapping it up, we're going to get into, I think we've done this, but again, we got to finish it off. Chicken wing choices, sponsored by Fair Trade Workforce. Vince Gonzalez, going to be outsourced employees at recession-proof rates. Hit up Vince for your staffing needs. But Alex, drums or flats?
Drums all the way, man. You guys will never catch me changing.
Ranch or blue cheese?
Blue cheese.
And breaded or non-breaded?
Non-breaded. Just fried non-breaded.
Yo, why couldn't you just say breaded? I don't think anybody's got 3 out of 3 yet. Like, why does everybody keep going non-breaded at the end and ruining it?
The only breaded ones that I like are the ones that are sold here. If people from Chicago know the place, Jewel Osco. Jewel Osco has like this like bucket of chicken on Fridays, cheap chicken Fridays, and it's like you get a bucket.
Cheap chicken Fridays.
Yeah. It's literally like a bucket.
They couldn't sell from Monday to Wednesday, bro. They just left it for cheap chicken Fridays.
Yeah, it's like the best. It's a bucket of chicken. I honestly, when I was like not paying attention to like my weight and my health, I could eat a whole bucket by myself.
Jim didn't have a punchline. He's just participating in the conversation. So
no.
I thought he was going to tell us a really funny joke for a second. Like I thought there was going to be a joke coming up.
No, but it's right on the money. There's a lot of factors.
I was just expecting some like crazy. I'm gonna Google that and see is there actually a joke like that. But all right, man. What else do we got to do? We don't got to do anything. So
we don't do rapid fire with. Oh no, Lev's out today, right?
Yeah. So if anybody watches this or hears about his Lev's just going through some personal things, but we will have Lev back on the show. He didn't go anywhere. He just needs some time to recover from some stuff. And that's it. So, I mean, hey, man, thank you for coming on the show. I'm happy we got to talk. It's chill, man. Like we talk a lot anyways. It's cool to be able to talk about in person, more in depth, on some industry things.
It's no longer nerve-wracking to attend. It's just like having a conversation with my friend that everybody.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, man. That was what this podcast is set out to do. It's just supposed to be like a conversation that you would have with a friend on the phone, man. Like it's just supposed to be that environment. And I think people get really nervous because there's other like podcasts out there and things. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really been on any of them. I don't know how they're set up. I don't know the type of pressure they put on people. I mean, yeah, nobody invites me to their podcast. I don't think I've done a single podcast besides the Logistics Lounge since I started doing this, which is completely fine with me because I don't know what those podcasts are doing to their guests, but people are so nervous when they come here. They're like, I don't know, are they getting like tortured backstage or something? I don't know what's happening because people come here like, they're like, what are the questions going to be? What's going to happen? They're like shaking when they start the podcast. And like after 10 minutes, people are laughing, joking around. Like, I mean, this isn't a high pressure. It's not supposed to be a high pressure situation.
Like, it feels like the only thing missing between this, obviously we can't do, but the only thing missing would be like a beer, and it definitely would feel like a conversation.
Yeah. I was gonna smoke like midway through cigarette, but we're representing Click Logistics today, who's a sponsor of the show, and you're a friend of mine. So out of respect for everybody involved, I did not smoke a cigarette on this show, but I definitely could have.
Of course.
All right, have a beer. Shout out to you. Shout out to Click, and have a good rest of your night, bro.
You too. Thank you for having me again.
Peace, man. Wraps it up for episode 28. Alex Diaz of Click Logistics, an asset-based brokerage. If you need some help moving your freight, whether you're a shipper or if you need to find a driving position, stuff like that, hit them up and have a good rest of your day, everybody.